Alright everybody, welcome back. Today we're gonna have some fun, because today we're gonna be doing the exotic pet tier list. Now last time I made a tier list for pets, I basically narrowed down of all the pet species down to a top 20, and you guys said we want a video with all the pets, to which I reply, hell no. Okay, there's almost 60 different species of pets. That video would be the length of a full feature film. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do it in segments, starting today with exotic pets. I feel like it was just going to be fitting since last week we did a BM guide, and today we're going to follow up with the pet tier list, telling you guys which pets fit into the S tier, A tier, B, C, and D. Now just keep in mind, these are going to be opinions, okay? They're going to be based on realistic factors, but everybody's going to have an idea, a different idea of what's going to be an S tier pet. So I'll be rating these pets on a few different factors, which is going to be utility, special abilities, exotic abilities, synergy between the pet spec and the abilities that it has, as well as the looks that we have available. Before we get into it, guys, leave me a like down below is much appreciated, and if you want to see more content just like this every single week, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Without further ado, let's just jump right in. So starting off with the Carapads. Alright, they belong to the Tenacity Pet family, bringing you endurance training and survival of the fittest, a little bit of a passive health increase, as well as a nice defensive cooldown for you. The special ability is called Bulwark, and basically it's going to give the pet a 50% damage reduction. So all in all, as far as the pet spec and the special ability goes, it's got some pretty good synergy here if you want to have your pet do some tanking for you. The exotic ability is called Calcified Carapace. It says reduces physical damage taken by math, right? Okay, so I went ahead and did the math, and I was suspicious of the results. I was thinking my math was off because the number is actually shockingly low that I came up with. So I went ahead and logged in and checked what the pet's tooltip actually said. Now granted, I'm only at item level 200, give or take, but the damage reduction for your pet is literally 33 damage. Fucking ass. Completely useless in PvP, unnoticeable in PvE, utter garbage. Literally a waste of an exotic ability, quite seriously. Now, if this pet was an exotic, I'd probably put him up in the A tier. Good for tanking, got some good synergy, but since the exotic ability is completely wasted, actually, you know what? Before I rank these guys, let's talk about the appearances. We have the Gorms with a couple different models. You have the regular ones, got the ones with horns on them, as well as this one with a modified head, kind of looks like a meatball for a head. And then you have the Crowlusks, and that's it. So not much to offer in the looks department, a waste of an exotic ability. We're gonna go, oof. I think there are worse pets, so we'll go C tier. Moving on to the Core Hounds. A lot of people like to use Core Hounds, so let's run down what it has to offer. Comes with the Ferocity Pet spec, giving you Predator's Thirst and Primal Rage. That's going to give you 10% passive leech, as well as an ability that increases you and your party's haste by 30%. Basically, this is the Bloodlust ability. Very useful. Huge damage buff. And that leech will help you stay alive as long as you're doing damage. Pet also comes with the ability Obsidian Skin, which is basically a rename of the ability that the Carapads have, believe it or not. Just a good defensive ability for the pet, not for you. So again, if your pet's gonna be doing tanking for you, the combination of the Ferocity Pet spec with that leech, as well as the Obsidian Skin ability, does have some pretty good synergy. Now the exotic ability that the Core Hounds have is called Molten Hide. It says when the Core Hound takes melee attacks, it infuses its hide with molten lava, causing however much attack and fire damage to all further melee attackers for 10 seconds. Molten Hide can only trigger once every minute. Now, again, who knows how much 8.19% of attack power is. So I went ahead and jumped in game, and for me, as an averagely geared hunter, the Core Hound with this ability was doing 167 damage per second over a 10-second duration, resulting in 1,670 damage. Not significant, but at the same time, it's there. Now again, if your goal is for your pet to tank for you, this isn't a bad option. You get a little bit of extra DPS when your pet is taking the aggro of melee attackers, as well as some leech for you and for your pet to help you and your pet stay alive, combined with the special ability that's also going to add to the survivability of your pet. Not too bad of an option. Again, that exotic ability doesn't do too much damage, but it's pretty cool. As far as looks go, we have the traditional Core Hounds, the Molten Magma two-headed dogs, as well as the Guardian Hounds and the Drake Hounds. Now the core hounds also come in an orange, a red, and a yellow. Not a lot of variety as far as looks go, but they are super cool looking in my opinion. I think the models are done really well, and overall it's just a very unique look for a pet compared to any other pet that we have. We're gonna put these guys in the B tier actually. I was gonna put them A tier. If the exotic ability did just a little bit more damage, then it would be worth it. Keep in mind the ability can only trigger once every minute. So it's not like you're constantly getting that, you know, roughly 170 DPS from your pet. It's only for 10 seconds out of a minute. We'll put them in the B tier. Moving on to the Devilsaurs, a community favorite and one of my favorites as well. Despite another pet that basically is a waste of an exotic ability, I still like these pets a lot, and here's why. Belongs to the Ferocity Pet spec, which is my personal favorite spec in the game, just because of the type of content that I like to do. This is going to be great in your battlegrounds. This is going to be phenomenal in your solo content. Also comes with the ability Monstrous Bite, which causes the Mortal Wounds debuff. So again, phenomenal in battlegrounds. If you don't know what Mortal Wounds is, it decreases the effectiveness of the healing received by the enemy, and for against enemy players that's 25%, and a 25% damage reduction, or excuse me, a 25% reduction in healing received is significant. It's really significant, you guys. This is going to really help you finish off those enemies, even if they have a healer pocketing them. Now, as far as the synergy between these abilities goes, it's not too great for soloing. You would want a little bit more pet defense if you're doing any solo content, but phenomenal in battlegrounds. Comes to the exotic ability Feast. Says the Devilsaur feasts on a nearby humanoid or beast corpse within 5 yards, healing it for 20% of its maximum health and restoring 20 focus over 6 seconds. So here's the thing, guys. If you want to heal your pet to full health using this ability, not only would you have to have 5 corpses right next to your pet, it would also take a full 30 seconds, and that's just not practical. Quite frankly, it's just not practical. You know, it's a pretty cool ability if you want to troll your enemies in a PvP situation, and it's pretty badass if you take one of the undead models, but all in all, the ability as a whole is pretty useless. But speaking of models, we do have a couple different kinds. We have the Skeletal Devilsaurs, which I'm quite taken by. We also have models like Undasta. We have the regular old Devilsaurs, which also look pretty badass, even though they're pretty basic. We've got Thok the Bloodthirsty, as well as the classic Devilsaurs, including models like King Crush. Now, given that it's a Tyrannosaurus fucking Rex, you have the option to tame undead models. That is, if you have the simple Tome of Bone Binding, or if you are undead. And the fact that, you know, aside from the exotic ability, this pet is an absolute monster in battlegrounds. I'm gonna go ahead and put him, you know, I think I'm gonna put him up in the A tier. Now it would be B tier with core hounds, except for the fact that it's got more models. The models there are arguably cooler. Again, that's gonna be boiling down to opinion. But yeah, we'll put those in the A tier. Next, we're gonna move on to the Shale Beast. Shale Beast belong to the Cunning Pet spec, which means it's gonna grant you pathfinding and Master's Call. Pathfinding giving you an 8% increased passive movement speed, and Master's Call is going to be an ability to help you get out of roots and snares. This pet spec is quite blatantly, in my opinion, built for PvP, specifically arenas. It does a great job, don't get me wrong. They come with a Solid Shell ability, which is another pet defensive, and if I'm reading this correctly, it's literally another rename of the Core Hounds and the Carapads ability. Now keep in mind, there's only 6 special abilities that any given pet can have. It's about the combination of the pet spec, which there's only 3 of, the special ability, okay, again, which there are 6 of, as well as the exotic ability, which is going to be unique to each exotic pet. But as far as synergy so far, with one spec focused obviously on mobility and the special ability focused on a pet defensive, I wouldn't say they work too well together personally. They also come with the ability Shimmering Shale, which reduces magic damage taken by math. And this is the same math that the Carapads came with, meaning that for me, at roughly 200 item level, this is going to reduce my pet's magical damage taken by 33. And that's only magic damage. This isn't even the total damage. This is just magic damage. Another waste of an exotic ability. And you know, as I'm going through these, I'm wondering, what the hell is Blizzard putting their, well, like, what are they delegating their resources for? Because it seems like the game can be improved in a lot of areas, and I think the community roughly agree with me on that. And like, whoever designed these exotic abilities must not play Hunter, and that's just sad. As far as appearances go, we have the Shale Worms and the Shale Spiders coming in a variety of neon looking colors. They do look pretty cool. Not a whole lot of variety, not a whole lot of synergy, waste of an exotic ability. These guys go D tier. So for you Shale Beast lovers out there, sorry not sorry. Pterodactyx is next. Pterodactyx are a fun one. Actually, they were a fun one. I forgot about this. Okay, so the Pterodactyx used to come with the updraft ability, which basically slows the fall speed of you and your pet. This ability also belongs to the Feathermanes. Now, when I logged in, just to make sure and test out these abilities, I summoned my Pterodactyx, and lo and behold, the updraft ability is no longer there. Now, I know that when Shadowlands pre-patch first launched, and we're all stuck at level 50, I remember that some of the exotic abilities that these pets have didn't unlock until level 54 or something like that. And so that's what I had assumed was going to be the deal with the Pterodactyx. But at level 60, I have no updraft ability. Let me know if this is a bug with my game or something, you guys. If you guys have the updraft ability, please let us know down in the comments. I would have put this guy straight up in the S tier, honestly. Let's take a look at the rest of what it has to offer. Cunning Pet spec gives you pathfinding and Master's Call, a little bit of mobility, helping you get out of roots and snares. Also comes with the Ancient Hide ability. Basically, this is a pet defensive where the damage reduction, which is going to be 60% in this case, is going to automatically trigger when your pet gets to 40% health. Same type of situation as, you know, the Carapads, except for you're getting a little bit more damage reduction, and it's also going to be automatically triggering. So just one less thing for you to manage, essentially. But again, with a pet spec focused on mobility and a pet special ability focused on pet survivability, not really any synergy here. And not only is it's not just a waste of an exotic ability, literally this pet doesn't have an exotic ability anymore. So I don't even understand why it's still an exotic pet. Again, let me know if your pet does have the updraft ability still, but based on the information that I have to go off, D tier, which is very unfortunate. These were one of my favorites. And just to run you down on the looks real quick, we do have the regular Pterodactyxes, we do have the Harness Pterodactyx, we have the Classic Pterodactyx, we have the Sky Screamers, which are my personal favorite, and yeah, but again, with no exotic ability, gotta put it in the D tier. Next, we're gonna be looking at Cleft Hoofs. Now, Cleft Hoofs are hands down the best pet that you can take if you're doing any type of solo content or any content where your pet's going to be tanking for you instead of an actual tank player. Now, belongs to the Ferocity Pet spec, giving you that little bit of leech, as well as that big ol' offensive cooldown with Primal Rage. Comes with the Thick Hide ability, which is the same automatically triggering defensive cooldown that the Pterodactyxes have, as well as the exotic ability Blood of the Rhino, which states, the Cleft Hoof has 10% additional armor and increases the effectiveness of healing received by 20%. So we have a handful of things that are contributing to the tankiness of your pet. We have 10% additional armor, 20% increased effectiveness of healing with things like your Mend Pet and your Exhilaration. We have an automatically triggering defensive cooldown for your pet. And we also have passive leech to help us stay alive and to help your pet stay alive. If you're using your misdirection, you're doing solo content, it's almost impossible to kill a Cleft Hoof, to be completely honest. Now, as far as the appearances go, we do have the Draenor Cleft Hoofs. We do have the Saddle Draenor Cleft Hoofs. We have Fault Line, super badass pet. We also have the Rhinos and the Outland Cleft Hoofs. Now, they all look pretty similar. They look pretty cool in my opinion. Some of them pretty basic, some of them a little bit more intricate or exotic, if you will. But since this is literally the best pet you can take in solo content, and keep in mind that BM Hunters are one of, if not the best spec in the entire game to solo with, Cleft Hoofs go right up into the S tier. Moving on to the Akiri. This is a pet that also has some pretty good synergy. Belongs to the Cunning Pet spec, giving you plus 8% passive movement speed, as well as the Master's Call ability, allowing you to get out of roots and snares. Once again, a really mobility-focused pet spec, and they come with the ability Tendon Rip, which basically reduces the enemy's movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. Now, it's on a 10-second cooldown, so assuming the pet AI is perfect and you let your pet autocast this, your enemy is going to be slowed 60% of the time. Now, the pet AI is not perfect, not by any means. So we're going to round down and say about 50% of the time, if you let your pet autocast this, your enemy is going to be slowed by 50%. Great CC capabilities with this pet, 100%. And the exotic ability is going to be called Dune Strider, increases the Akiri's movement speed by 30%. So we have some great synergy here, especially for a PvP environment. With pathfinding, you're speeding yourself up. With Master's Call, you are not letting yourself get slowed down. With Tendon Rip, you are slowing your enemy. And with Dune Strider, your pet's speed is increased. So what's happening here is you and your pet are both getting sped up significantly, and your enemy is being slowed down significantly. Now, as Beast Mastery Hunters, again, specifically with this pet in a PvP situation, you are going to have no problem keeping the proper distance from your enemy, especially if you're going up against something like a melee DPS. And again, with that Dune Strider exotic ability, your pet is going to be absolutely glued to the enemy. Now, kind of some weird aesthetics going on here. We have the Kunchong, we have the Akiri Goliaths, we have the Rugged Silithids, we have the Soldier Silithids, we have the Silithid Colossi, Worker Silithids, as well as the Sand Reavers. Now, they're all basically ugly-ass looking insects, but some of them are actually pretty fucking metal. And I said it in the last video that I featured Akiri in. I'm surprised they don't use these guys more often. These guys are gonna go, you know what? I'm gonna put them S tier. I was gonna put them in A tier just because the variety of the appearances that we have are pretty one-dimensional. You know, no matter what species of Akiri that you're taming, it's roughly gonna look the same. But we have a lot of color variation, and therefore a lot of opportunity to pair with some transmogs. So S tier they go. Next, we're going to be looking at Spirit Beasts. Spirit Beasts belong to the Tenacity Pet spec, granting you endurance training and survival of the fittest. That's a 5% increased maximum health, as well as reducing the damage that you and your pet take by 20% for 6 seconds. Nice little defensive cooldown there. They come with the Spirit Pulse ability, which removes one disease, magic, and poison effect from the pet. Not very cool at all. This ability used to be Spirit Shock, and basically was the equivalent of what we now have as Tranquilizing Shot. But now, since we have Tranquilizing Shot baseline as hunters, this is kind of what they put in place. It's not very good, but whatever. Also comes with the Spirit Mend ability. Now this says, Spirit Beast heals the current friendly target for math, plus an additional math over 10 seconds. Now, with the launch of Shadowlands, Spirit Mend got a pretty massive nerf. It was like a 60% nerf, actually. Not nearly as useful as it used to be, or at least not nearly as OP. It's still useful, and combined with the Tenacity Pet spec, I would say there's some good synergy here regarding raids and dungeons, right? Because you're basically getting 2 additional defensive cooldowns with this pet, with Survival of the Fittest and with Spirit Mend. One's going to reduce the damage you take, and one is going to heal you. And we all know as hunters, we're kind of squishy, and we don't have a lot of options as far as defensive cooldowns, so I think that in a situation where you might suddenly take a lot of damage, but most of the time you will have a healer and a tank to assist you, these pets are going to be clutch. Absolutely clutch. Not to mention the looks that they have, that the game has to offer. Most of these are actual pieces of content. A lot of them require questing to be able to tame. A lot of them require finesse. A lot of them require a lot of patience. A lot of them have special mechanics that need to be fulfilled in order to be able to tame them. So let's go over the appearances that we have. First of all, Elegon, am I right? Next, we have Hati, Bullwinkle, we have the Lost Spectral Griffin spawning in Stormwind, and we have Gon spawning in Orgrimmar. Now keep in mind, the Lost Spectral Griffin and Gon can be tamed by the opposite factions if you're able to sneak into the opponent's capital city, which can be really fun. Like I said, basically a piece of content. We got the Mana Sabers, we got the Spirit Foxes, Spirit Tigers, we have Lokna Hawk, we have Gara, Karoma, I mean, you got Skull, we have Spirit Porcupines, Arcturus, Banthalos, Ghostcrawler. I mean, there is a lot of variety here, and they all look sick as hell. Now, in BFA, these belong to S tier, to be clear. Now that we have Tranquilizing Shot baseline as hunters, the Spirit Beasts themselves are not offering us as much utility, plus the nerfs to Spirit Mend, you have to take it down a tier. Granted, these are very, very much still an A tier pet, especially, like I said, if you're taking it into a dungeon or a raid. Next, we'll look at the Stonehounds. These are an interesting one. Tenacity Pet spec, again, giving you some good defensive, passive, and active. They come with the ability Stone Armor, which is the same automatically triggering defensive cooldown that we were talking about earlier. Now, so far, the synergy looks pretty good. You know, it's all based on survivability for you and for your pet. Also comes with the ability Eternal Guardian. It says, when used, your pet will miraculously return to life with full health. Now, this is a very unique ability, and more useful than ever, quite frankly, because of the nerf to our Revive Pet, which used to be, if you remember, a 2-second cast, and now it's a 4-second cast. So being able to instantly revive your pet cannot be underestimated, right? It's on an 8-minute cooldown, which kind of sucks. I really, really, really wish this didn't have a cooldown and could just be used anytime your pet died. If that was the case, it would compete with the Cleft Hoof as far as solo capabilities, right? Not only because the Stonehounds have no problem with survivability, with the combination of endurance training and with the stone armor ability, but also because even if your pet did die, you basically have it back up instantly. You don't even have to turtle revive. Since it's on an 8-minute cooldown, and since like there's not really, I mean, it's really cool and it's got good synergy, but it just doesn't fit with any of the content that's in the game, unfortunately. It wouldn't do too well in PvP. I mean, there's way better options that you can take in PvP. Granted, as BM hunters, often if you're in PvP, the enemy's gonna know to kill your pet, and that's gonna significantly hinder your performance. You know, basically once your pet dies, you're dead. So this could very well be useful in those type of PvP situations. However, I still think that there's a lot better pets that you could take in PvP if your goal is obviously to win. And for that reason, I'm gonna put him B tier with the core hounds. Hang on, okay? Because we haven't talked about the appearances. We have the Gargons, we have the saddled Gargons, and we have the Quilin, as well as the flying Quilin and the armored Quilin. These are some of my least favorite appearances in the entire game. Again, this boils down to personal preference, once again, but because it's just another waste of an exotic pet, you guys. It's just another waste. It's honestly, it's frustrating. C tier. That's just kind of how it is. Next is the Water Striders. Water Striders are a fun one. They are in the Cunning Pet family, bringing you Pathfinding and Master's Call. Comes with the ability Soothing Waters, which is basically a rename of the Spirit Beast ability. It used to be basically what we had as a Tranquilize and Dispel. But now with that, we have Tranquilizing Shot. Again, the pet is not offering as much utility as it used to in BFA. And there's not really any synergy here between the pet spec and the special ability. But it does come with a pretty cool exotic ability called Surface Trot. It says allows the hunter and the Water Strider to walk across water. Any damage will cancel the effect. Cool, right? Cool. How useful is it really? Not very. It's not very useful. Because the only thing that this pet really has to offer is this exotic ability. And if you get hit, you're screwed. So, I mean, you could take it like in an area where you don't have flying yet. You need to cross a body of water and you don't want to go all the way around. Maybe you're not near a flight master. I mean, this is pretty situational ability. I mean, you could cross rivers in like a battleground, so that's cool. But then again, like the pet doesn't have anything to offer as far as utility in PvP. So I would still recommend taking a different pet and just trying to jump over the river, swim through for half a second. The appearances that we have the light Water Striders, the heavy Water Striders, and then the Fen Striders. They're basically little bugs that look like they would be able to walk on water. Hell, you guys, you know, if the special ability offered more utility, if there might be a little bit more synergy, if the Surface Trot ability, you know, if the damage didn't cancel the effect and you could continuously walk on water, or maybe like if you took damage, you had like a 5-second window or something to get to land before you sink, that would be cool. All in all though, as cool as they seem on paper, I'm really going to put these down in the D tier. Next, we're going to talk about worms. Worms are actually a pretty cool one. So they come with the Tenacity Pet spec, granting you a little bit of passive survival with a 5% increased maximum health, as well as the survival of the fittest defensive cooldown. They also come with the special ability Acid Spit, which slows the target by 50% for 6 seconds on a 10-second cooldown. So again, much like the Akiri, your enemy is going to be slowed about 50% of the time if you let your pet auto-cast this ability. And now, the exotic ability is called Burrow Attack. It says the worm burrows into the earth and shakes the ground, dealing, you know, however much damage, in nature damage, over 8 seconds. So I went ahead and tested this ability out, and there's some unique things to know about it. First of all, against 3 training dummies, this ability's DPS was keeping up with the pet's other abilities. So if you're going up against, you know, 4 or more enemies, I think you will actually see an increase in DPS here, despite a lot of people saying that this is a DPS loss. In the right situation, okay, single target, it definitely is a DPS loss. But against mobs, sure. Another cool thing about Burrow Attack is that it does not break camouflage, which can make for some pretty cool defensive plays if you're doing battlegrounds. Now, granted, it's very situational. Very situational. This pet's basically only gonna be able to maximize its potential if you're defending a flag. However, if you're camouflaged and the enemy tries to cap a flag, you can send your worm over there, have them do the Burrow Attack, and they're not gonna see the worm. All they're gonna see is the attack animation. They're probably gonna be confused as hell. Now, this ability is on a 14-second cooldown, which means that you can potentially get 4 casts out of 1 camouflage. which can make for some pretty meme-like moments. And, you know, if you're doing RBGs and your role is to defend, and that's the strategy that you guys are going with, and that's what you're doing, why not, right? Nobody's ever going to see it coming. Nobody will ever see it coming. A worm? Get the hell out of here. Nobody's ever going to see this coming. And if you're taking the stomp talent, your pet still stomps whenever you cast a barb shot while your pet is channeling Burrow Attack. Pretty cool. Given that it's very, very situational, there's not really any synergy between the abilities and the pet spec, or the exotic ability and the special ability for that matter. Oh, let's look at the appearances first. We have the tidal worms. We have the jormongers. We have the silkworms. We have the classic worms. So, I mean, they all look like worms, right? Some of them are pretty damn cool. This is a really hard one to place, guys. Let me know down in the comments where you would put the worms, or matter of fact, any of the other pets that we have in this video. I'm gonna put them C tier, just because it's so situational that you're able to use them. Not to say that it's not gonna be useful if you're in the right situation, but all in all, if I'm rating the pet as a whole, it's gotta go in C tier. And lastly, we have the Camaras. Belonging to the Ferocity Pet spec, granting you Primal Rage and Predator's Thirst. Just a reminder, that's 10% passive leech, as well as that big ol' offensive cooldown. Comes with the ability Frost Breath, which is just a renaming of the slow ability. Okay, so you have a combination of offensive and defensive utility, as well as a little bit of CC utility. So pretty well-rounded so far. I would say you'd be pretty well off taking this pet in the battleground if it wasn't for the exotic ability. Okay, you can still take it in a battleground and it's going to do well. I'm just saying that this is another wasted exotic ability in my opinion. Now, it's the exact same as the worm's ability. The only problem is it doesn't burrow underground, right? And it does damage in a frontal cone, not in a circle. So this is highly dependent, the damage that you're going to get out of this ability. It's going to be highly dependent on whether or not your pet happens to be facing precisely towards the most amount of enemies, which it rarely ever will be. So I'm going to say, once again, another wasted exotic ability. And just to throw it out there, like I said, it's the same as with the worms. You can still stomp while casting this ability. You can still, or it still doesn't break any camouflage, so your pet can fucking camo and cast this, I guess. I don't know. As far as appearances go, though, pretty freaking metal. We have the Death Camaras. We have the Saddled Death Camaras. We have the Rylax. We have the Armored Rylax, which are probably my favorite. The Saddled Rylax, Plated Camaras, as well as the traditional classic Camaras. They all come in a variety of colors, and I think they look sick as hell, to be quite frank. I like this model a lot. I really wish that the exotic ability was a little bit better, or rather a lot better. Because again, it has the potential to do some good AoE damage if, you know, your pet was able to aim for a shit. So it's just like, it's so frustrating, you guys. But since the rest of the things that the pet has to offer are pretty cool, as far as appearance, spec, and special ability, we're gonna go B tier. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know down in the comments where you would place some of these pets. I'm actually really curious to hear what you guys have to say. If you did like the video, leave me a like down below. It's much appreciated and helps the channel out a ton. And if you want to see another video next week, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell. Until then, I'm Blue Monkey, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.